So today's video is going to be a little bit different than normal. I'm about halfway through filming and editing a video, and I started to have a lot of issues with the way I was doing things. Instead of me continuing along the process and just getting through everything, I was having a hard time where I was just fighting myself about whether or not the takes were good, whether or not the content was good, and I started to struggle a lot. And this is something I've noticed a lot in my life, with a lot of the people around me having some real struggles with being on their own team. And instead of coming up with solutions to their problems, a lot of the times I found that they started to fight themselves and they didn't get anywhere. So I took some time to do some research, and I jotted a couple notes about ways that people should stop fighting themselves and hopefully become their best teammate, because realistically in life you have one person on your team always, and that's you. And so whenever someone does something or wants to do something, sometimes they stop midway or they don't even get started, and I've seen a lot of cool ideas that never came to fruition because people gave up. And I think that's such a big deal. If you never try, then how are you going to know what you're good at, what you're not good at? And all of the stories you tell in your head just become real. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of go through, and hopefully you find this relevant. The first thing I'd like to ask you is, what is the most important step that somebody can take? Keep that with you as we go through this, and we'll refer to it at the end. Usually there are like 3 steps where someone finds a lot of problems, and usually I would say that it is right before they've started, in the starting process where they're just beginning and becoming an intermediate, or way later down the line when they're an expert at something and the problems just seem insurmountable. So I'm going to tackle each of those, but each of the exercises and the things that I'm talking about here usually are relevant to the others in some way, shape, or form. If you're having the problems of starting something and you tend to have a lot of issues not even getting yourself to the point of getting to it, I think you need to consider that every journey has to start somewhere. I see a lot of my athletes look at some crazy things down the line, and they compare themselves to the pros. Kind of like how, even with my content creation, I'm worried about how does it reflect with people that have been doing this for years. And I have to consider that wherever you're starting, this is a huge journey, and if you don't start doing something and gain experience, you're really just going to be stagnant, and it never will go anywhere. So of course the stuff you're going to put out in the beginning is crap, but that's totally okay. So as long as you have good perspective, you don't let perfectionism cut you down, and you don't let limiting beliefs stop you from trying things, you'll probably, hopefully, get over that hurdle of just getting into things. It's important to make mistakes often, because without making mistakes, you're never going to learn. You're never going to learn the do's and the don'ts. And especially, like, very early, the more mistakes you make, the better you'll get quickly. Now, if you're doubting the early steps, it is important to allow yourself to acknowledge that there is a problem, but that the problem is not you. It is something that has just happened, right? You can accept that this thing went wrong, and then you can take affirmative action to move it forwards. This will help you spin a positive mindset into bringing something in, realizing the things that have gone wrong and reflecting over them, and then pushing forwards properly without it weighing down on your own self-worth. Sometimes, even with that mindset though, you don't get anywhere. And I think this is something that is not said enough. It is okay to take a guilt-free break. It is very important to take a break when things don't seem to be going anywhere. And too much, I see someone take a break and they feel guilty about it because there's no progress, there's no nothing. But sometimes it's very necessary. In the same light, judgment is a tool and not a perspective. So when you look at something that goes wrong, just remember that is something to identify. That is not who you are or the quality of whoever's behind that. When you're past the intermediate stage and you're somewhat of a veteran at whatever you're doing, I think people often forget the journey. That is, that they kind of forget that where they are came from this place so far back down the line. And I think it's very important to look back at your old self and your old problems. the problems that you face now, if you're very far down the line, are nowhere near the problems that you had beforehand. And the fact that you're having these huge complicated problems is a big deal. It's a big step, and it shows growth, right? And if you consider that growth and the process, hopefully you'll see that each time that you had an issue beforehand, you dealt with a certain way and you moved forward. Now each step or problem right now might take longer, but that's just because they are bigger problems. They are things that you haven't addressed before. You know, it is important to consider how many times people get back up after they've fallen when they run into an issue, instead of just that I have fallen or that you have fallen. So in that light, I think that when we look again at what the most important step someone can take is it's always the next one. Because every step that you take as you move forward really does show character. It shows a willingness to improve, to get better, and I hope that person becomes you and you can stay that way. Because realistically, if you want something, you have to fight for it. And hopefully you can just get out of your own way, not judge yourself, and just try. Anyways, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this, feel free to let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.